All right, let's jump right in. Today we're doing a deep dive into Jordan Peterson and specifically his thoughts on self-improvement. We're going to be looking at this YouTube video. It's from Motivation 2 study, and the title is, well, it's pretty intense. It's called Jordan Peterson, Fix Yourself Before It's Too Late.
Oh, wow. Yeah, just the title itself is a statement.
It is, it is. And one of the things that jumps out right away from this video is Peterson's focus on this concept of fixing yourself. Taking a hard look in the mirror, so to speak.
Right.
Confronting those flaws we all have and trying to improve them.
Yeah, I think that's a theme that runs throughout a lot of his work.
It does. And he asks this very simple question, but it's really powerful when you think about it. He says, what's one thing I'm doing wrong that I know I'm doing wrong that I could fix? It's like so simple, but so profound at the same time.
Right, because it cuts through all the noise, all the BS, and it forces you to really get real with yourself.
Right.
Like, no excuses.
Yeah. It's like he's shining a light on those areas we tend to avoid, those things that we know we should be working on, but maybe we just haven't quite had the courage to face them head on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think he would say that's a big part of the problem.
Okay.
That we tend to avoid those uncomfortable truths about ourselves.
Right. And that avoidance, that's what holds us back.
It does. It keeps us stuck in these patterns of behavior that aren't serving us.
And it's not just about identifying those flaws, right? It's about then taking ownership of them and actually doing something about them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Peterson would argue that that process of confronting those shortcomings, that's really the foundation of any kind of personal growth.
It's like that's where it all begins. And it doesn't stop there, though.
Right. Peterson then connects this idea of fixing yourself to the idea of truth-telling. He actually says that being truthful can make you a more formidable person. Like, you're better equipped to deal with the world.
Yeah. It's an interesting connection he makes there.
It is. It is. Because on the surface, you wouldn't necessarily think those two things go together. But when you really think about it,
Right.
there's a certain power that comes from being able to articulate your truth clearly and honestly.
And it's not about being mean or hurtful or anything like that.
Right.
It's about being authentic.
Exactly. It's about having the courage to express your perspective,
Yeah.
even if it's not popular or even if it makes people uncomfortable.
Right.
And I think for Peterson, that's a really important part of personal growth.
He uses this analogy of a student writing an essay, and the student's trying so hard to please the professor that they end up losing their own voice in the process.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
It's like they're so focused on getting a good grade that they forget to actually say anything meaningful.
Right. And they end up just regurgitating what they think the professor wants to hear.
Exactly.
Instead of expressing their own unique perspective.
Which, ironically, is probably what would get them a better grade in the first place.
Probably.
But, it speaks to a larger challenge I think we all face, which is finding that balance between fitting in and being true to ourselves.
Yeah, and it's easy to fall into that trap of trying to please everyone.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, especially in today's world with social media and all that.
Right. You're constantly bombarded with these messages about what you should be doing, what you should be thinking, what you should look like.
And it's so easy to lose sight of, who you really are and all of that.
Yeah. And I think Peterson would say that that's a recipe for unhappiness, when you're constantly trying to live up to someone else's expectations.
Right, when you're not living authentically. So how do we break free from that? I mean, how do we find that courage to speak our truth, even when it's difficult?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that our perspective has value, even if it's different from the prevailing narrative, and that it's okay to disagree with people. It's okay to have different opinions and to express those opinions respectfully.
And that doesn't mean being aggressive or confrontational.
No, not at all. It's about, asserting yourself in a way that's both honest and compassionate.
I like that.
And I think, as you start to do that more and more, you'll find that you attract people into your life who appreciate that authenticity.
It's funny because when I think about the people I admire most, they're often the ones who aren't afraid to speak their minds. They're the ones who are willing to stand up for what they believe in, even if it's not popular.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the people who make a real difference in the world, the ones who are willing to challenge the status quo.
Right. Right. And Peterson, then he connects this idea of truth-telling to something that seems completely unrelated at first.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about the importance of reading challenging works, particularly the classics.
Like Shakespeare and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll admit, when I first heard this, I was like, wait, what? What does Shakespeare have to do with self-improvement?
It does seem like a bit of a jump.
It does. But
Yeah.
he makes a really interesting case for how engaging with those difficult texts, even if they're frustrating at times, can actually sharpen our thinking and make us more effective communicators.
So it's not just about becoming well-read or cultured.
Hmm.
It's about the cognitive benefits that come from wrestling with those complex ideas.
Exactly. He talks about how reading those challenging works forces us to slow down, to really think critically, and to develop a deeper understanding of the nuances of language.
Yeah, because it's not always obvious what the author's trying to say,
No.
right? You have to really work at it.
You do. And I think in today's world, where everything is so fast-paced and we're constantly bombarded with information,
Right.
it's so easy to just skim the surface of things.
To just kind of passively consume information.
Exactly. And I think Peterson is challenging us to be more active, more engaged readers.
To really grapple with those ideas and to let them challenge our own thinking.
He has this really interesting way of describing words.
Yeah.
He calls them ancient artifacts.
Mm.
And he says they carry echoes of the past, influencing our thinking in ways we might not even realize.
No, it's like these words have a history, a weight to them.
They do. They do. And by engaging with those ancient artifacts, so to speak, we're not only expanding our vocabulary, but we're also deepening our understanding of the world around us.
It's like we're tapping into this vast reservoir of knowledge and wisdom that's been passed down through the ages.
Exactly. And I think that's something that's often lost in today's world, that sense of history, that sense of continuity.
Yeah, we're so focused on the present, on the new, and the novel.
Right.
Right.
That we often forget about the past
Right.
and the lessons that we can learn from it.
Yeah. And I think Peterson is reminding us of the importance of that historical perspective.
Okay, so we've got fixing yourself as the foundation. We've got truth-telling as this powerful tool. And now we're adding reading challenging works to the mix to help us hone our thinking and become more articulate. Where do we go from there?
Well, Peterson takes it one step further.
He does.
He does. He argues that writing is actually the key to thinking clearly and to success in life.
So it's not enough to just read those challenging works. We have to actually put pen to paper ourselves.
Exactly. And I think what he's getting at is that the act of writing forces us to really organize our thoughts, to clarify our ideas, and to really figure out what we believe and why.
It's like taking all those jumbled thoughts swirling around in our heads and giving them structure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And in the process, we often discover things about ourselves that we didn't even realize were there.
He has this great quote. He says something like, writing is formalized thinking.
That's good.
It is. It is. And he believes that this process of wrestling with our thoughts on paper is essential for both personal growth and for achieving success in any field.
So it's not just for writers, it's for everyone.
It is. He encourages people to write about the problems that truly grip them, the things that keep them up at night.
It's about finding your voice, but it's also about honing your ability to think critically and to persuade others.
And he specifically advises university students to write about problems that they genuinely care about.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. He says, pick a problem that grips you, something that you're passionate about.
Right, because if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to be engaged with the material.
Exactly. And you're not going to do your best work. And I think that's advice that applies beyond the academic world too, It's about finding those things that light you up, that make you want to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, and then pursuing those things with everything you've got.
Exactly. So we've moved from fixing yourself and speaking your truth to embracing challenging literature, and now to the power of writing. It's like each of these elements builds upon the previous one.
It does. It's like he's creating this framework for personal growth.
He is, and it's a framework that's both challenging and inspiring.
It is, because it's not about following some predetermined path. It's about creating your own journey.
Right. It's about figuring out what works for you and then going for it.
And it's about being willing to put in the work, because none of this comes easy.
No, he doesn't. And Peterson, he doesn't shy away from that. He's very upfront about the fact that personal growth requires effort, it requires discipline.
Right. It's not about quick fixes or easy answers.
It's about doing the hard work, day in and day out.
And it's about embracing the challenges along the way, because those challenges are what make us stronger.
So he's not sugarcoating anything. He's not trying to sell us some easy self-help formula.
No, he's giving us the real deal.
He is. And I think that's why people are so drawn to his work, because it's honest, it's raw.
It's real. And it's challenging in the best possible way.
And I think that's a good place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part, but there's still so much more to explore, so we'll dive back in and pick up where we left off in the next part.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
All right. So we're back. And we're ready to dig a little deeper into this idea of how to actually apply some of Jordan Peterson's ideas to our lives.
Yeah, because in the first part, we talked a lot about those big picture concepts, like fixing yourself, truth-telling, the importance of reading and writing. But I'm curious to know, how do we bridge that gap between theory and practice?
Right? How do we take all that stuff and make it actionable?
Exactly.
Well, Peterson actually offers some really practical advice.
Does he? Okay, I'm all ears.
He does. Remember that quote about fixing the things we repeat daily?
Yeah, the little things.
Right. He really emphasizes the importance of those seemingly mundane habits.
But what kind of habits are we talking about?
Think about, let's say, your morning routine.
Okay.
You just sort of go through the motions.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely guilty of that. Especially when I'm rushing.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead of just mindlessly going through those motions, what if you brought more intention to those actions?
Okay.
Even something as simple as brushing your teeth.
Okay.
Instead of just, scrubbing away for 30 seconds.
Right.
Really focus on each stroke. Like you're a sculptor working on a masterpiece.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's about bringing that level of mindfulness to even the smallest of tasks.
Exactly. And in doing so, you're developing that muscle of discipline, that attention to detail.
And that carries over into other areas of your life.
Precisely. It's like training for a marathon.
Okay.
You don't just wake up one day and run 26 miles.
Yeah, no. You start with those short runs, you build up your endurance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with personal growth. You start with those small daily habits, and you build from there.
So mastering those small things helps us tackle the bigger challenges.
Right. Because it's all connected. You're building that foundation.
I like that. Okay, so we start with those daily habits, but what about those bigger issues? The things that we really need to fix.
Well, Peterson encourages us to ask ourselves that question: what's one thing I'm doing wrong that I know I'm doing wrong that I could fix?
Right. It's about taking ownership. Right?
Yeah. And not just identifying those flaws, but actually committing to changing them.
But what if you're so focused on fixing those flaws that you become obsessed with perfection?
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a danger of getting caught up in that.
Right. It can be paralyzing.
Yeah. But I think Peterson would say that it's not about achieving some sort of flawless state. It's about recognizing that we're all human, we all make mistakes.
And it's about the process of continuous improvement, right?
Exactly. It's about striving to be a little bit better each day.
Okay, so it's not about beating ourselves up for our imperfections.
No, it's about accepting those imperfections.
And then working to improve them.
Right. And he often uses this metaphor of walking uphill
Oh, yeah, I've heard him talk about that.
to describe this journey of personal growth.
So it's not about reaching the top of the mountain and then just staying there.
No.
Oh.
It's about the continuous climb.
About always pushing yourself to go a little bit further.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important point. Because it's easy to get discouraged, right?
Yeah, it is.
When you feel like you're not making progress as quickly as you'd like.
Or when you hit those setbacks.
Right. But the key is to remember that it's a journey, not a destination.
And it's those challenges, those setbacks that ultimately make us stronger.
Right. Because they force us to dig deep, to tap into our resilience.
And you know what? When I think about those times in my life when I've felt most alive, it's often been when I've been pushing myself outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah. When you're challenging yourself.
Right. Like when I'm tackling something that's difficult, but also really meaningful.
Yeah. Because it's in those moments that we truly discover what we're capable of.
And we feel that sense of accomplishment.
Right. And Peterson would say that that feeling of accomplishment, that's what gives our lives meaning.
So it's not about seeking comfort and ease. It's about embracing the struggle.
It is. Because it's in that struggle that we find our purpose.
And that's where the real growth happens, right?
Yeah. It's like those muscles, you have to tear them down in order to build them back up stronger.
So how does this all tie into the idea of avoiding bitterness and finding meaning?
Well, I think Peterson would say that embracing those challenges is the antidote to bitterness.
How so?
Because it gives our lives purpose. It gives us something to strive for.
So it's not just about avoiding negative emotions like bitterness. It's about actively cultivating positive ones through meaningful action.
Exactly. And he contrasts this with a life that's focused solely on seeking pleasure and avoiding pain.
Like, remember that analogy he used about being stranded on a tropical island with unlimited cocktails?
Oh, yeah. That sounds pretty good at first, right?
Yeah, it does. Sign me up.
But Peterson argues that that kind of existence would eventually become unbearable.
Really? Why?
Because there's no challenge, there's no purpose.
So it's that lack of striving, that absence of a goal to work towards, that ultimately leads to a sense of emptiness.
Exactly. And that emptiness can easily turn into bitterness and resentment.
So it's not just about avoiding negative emotions, it's about finding something positive to strive for, something that gives our lives direction.
Yeah. And it's about recognizing that those challenges, those uphill climbs, are not obstacles to be avoided.
But opportunities for growth.
Precisely. And it's through those challenges that we discover our true potential.
It's like we're hardwired for this struggle.
Yeah. It's in our DNA to push ourselves beyond our limits.
And Peterson even connects this back to our evolutionary history, right?
He does. He argues that our ability to sacrifice, to delay gratification, that's what sets us apart from other animals.
Right. It's what allowed us to achieve all these incredible things.
Yeah, like building civilizations, creating art, developing technology.
So it's not just about resisting temptation, it's about consciously choosing to strive for something more.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that the path to fulfillment often requires effort, perseverance.
And a willingness to make sacrifices.
Right. It's not always going to be easy.
No, it's not. But I think Peterson would say that the rewards are worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because when we embrace those challenges, when we push ourselves beyond our comfort zones,
We discover who we really are.
right, and we find that sense of meaning and purpose that we're all searching for.
Okay, so we've established that embracing challenges and making sacrifices are essential. But for someone who's listening to this and feeling overwhelmed, feeling like they don't even know where to start, what advice would Peterson offer?
He would probably point them back to the importance of those daily routines.
Okay.
Remember, fix the things you repeat every day.
Right, start small.
It's not about making these huge, sweeping changes overnight.
It's about focusing on those incremental improvements.
Exactly. Maybe it's just taking 5 minutes each day to meditate, or going for a walk in nature, or reading a few pages of a challenging book.
So it's about finding those small ways to bring more intention and discipline into our lives.
Exactly. And as you start to do those things consistently, you'll find that it becomes easier to tackle those bigger challenges.
Because you're building that momentum.
Yeah. And you're developing those habits that support your growth.
This is really helpful. I
Yeah.
feel like it's making this whole idea of self-improvement a lot less daunting.
It should. Because it's not about being perfect. It's about progress.
It's about the journey.
Exactly. And it's a journey that we can all take, no matter where we're starting from.
You know, Al strikes me, this whole thing about self-improvement,
Yeah.
it really ties back into Peterson's emphasis on the power of language and articulation.
Oh, yeah.
Remember how he said that becoming more articulate is actually a moral imperative?
He did. And I think what he means by that is that the ability to think clearly and to communicate effectively, it's essential for creating a more just and compassionate world.
So it's not just about personal gain.
No, it's about using our words to build bridges, to foster understanding, to advocate for truth and justice.
Which is more important than ever these days.
It is, with all the misinformation and divisive rhetoric out there.
Yeah, it's like we need to be able to cut through the noise and have those difficult conversations.
We do, and we need
Yeah.
to be able to do so in a way that's both intelligent and compassionate.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of fixing those daily routines. We've talked about embracing challenges, about finding our purpose. What else? What other practical advice does Peterson offer?
Well, he also talks a lot about the importance of truth-telling.
Right, which we touched on earlier.
Yeah, but I think it's worth revisiting.
Especially in the context of these practical applications.
Exactly. Because it's one thing to say, okay, I need to be more truthful.
But it's another thing to actually do it.
Right. So how do we actually put that into practice?
Yeah, that's the question.
Well, Peterson would say that it starts with being honest with ourselves about our thoughts, our feelings, our motivations,
Even the ones that are uncomfortable.
especially the ones that are uncomfortable.
Because those are often the ones that we're most resistant to facing.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's in those uncomfortable truths that we often find the greatest opportunities for growth.
So it's
Yeah.
about having the courage to really look inward.
It is.
Yeah.
And to be brutally honest with ourselves.
Okay, so we start by being honest with ourselves, but then what?
Then it's about being honest with others.
Which can be really scary.
It can be. But it's also incredibly liberating.
Oh,
Because when you're no longer hiding behind a facade,
right.
when you're being your authentic self,
Uh,
you free yourself from the burden of pretending.
and you attract people into your life who appreciate you for who you really are.
Exactly. And those are the kind of relationships that are truly meaningful.
I like that. It's about building those authentic connections.
It is. And it starts with that willingness to be honest, both with ourselves and with others.
Peterson also talks about the importance of choosing our words carefully, right?
He does. Remember that metaphor about words being like ancient artifacts?
Uh-huh.
He's emphasizing that language has power.
It does. Words can build up or tear down.
They can.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be mindful of that, both in how we speak to ourselves and how we speak to others.
So it's not just about what we say, it's about how we say it.
Exactly. It's about choosing our words with intention and with care.
And recognizing that those words can have a lasting impact.
Yeah. They can shape the world around us for better or for worse.
This is making me think about his advice to university students about choosing a problem that truly grips them and then writing about it.
Yeah.
It's not just about fulfilling an academic requirement, it's about engaging with something that matters deeply.
It is. And it's about using our voices to make a difference.
Even if it's just a small difference.
Right. Because every little bit counts.
And it all starts with that willingness to speak our truth, to share our perspective.
And to use our words to create a more beautiful and just world.
This has been so insightful. I feel like we've really started to unpack some of those practical implications of Peterson's work.
We have. And I think there's even more to explore.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm excited to keep going.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
We've explored so much already. It's really amazing how many different areas his work touches on.
It is. And I think what's sticking with me most is this idea of finding purpose through identifying those problems that really bug us and dedicating ourselves to trying to solve them.
Yeah, that's such a key takeaway from Peterson's work. It's not about just avoiding pain and seeking comfort.
Right. It's about finding something meaningful to strive for, something that gives our lives direction.
Exactly. And he suggests that those problems, the things that keep us up at night, those are often the very things we should be focusing on.
So instead of seeing those anxieties as burdens, we should see them as clues.
Yeah, like a trail of breadcrumbs leading us towards something bigger.
I love that. It's like those things we're most afraid of, those problems we try to avoid, those might actually be the keys to unlocking our potential and finding our place in the world.
Exactly. It's about leaning into those challenges,
Yeah.
not shying away from them.
But how do we know which challenges are the right ones to focus on? You know, the ones that are truly meaningful for us.
That's a great question. And Peterson would probably say it's a process of self-discovery.
Okay.
It's about paying attention to those inner nudges, those things that spark our curiosity or ignite a sense of urgency within us.
So those things that kind of nag at us, that we just can't seem to ignore.
Yeah, those might be signs pointing us in the right direction.
Okay, so we pay attention to those inner nudges, but then what? How do we actually start tackling those challenges?
Well, Peterson would encourage us to explore them.
Explore. What does that mean?
It could mean doing some research, reading books, talking to experts.
Okay.
It could mean taking a class, joining a group, volunteering.
So it's about taking action, even if it's just small steps at first.
Exactly. And as you start to explore, you'll start to get a better sense of what resonates with you, what truly excites you, and what you're most passionate about.
And then you can start to focus your energy on those things.
Right, because it's in those areas where our passions and our skills intersect that we often find the most fulfilling work.
That's such a great point. So it's not just about finding a job that pays the bills. It's about finding work that aligns with our values and our interests.
Exactly. And Peterson believes that when we do that, when we find work that truly matters to us, that's when we unlock our full potential.
And that's when work stops feeling like work.
It does.
Yeah.
It becomes something more. It becomes a calling.
I love that. So it all starts with those inner nudges, those problems that keep us up at night. And it's about having the courage to explore those nudges, to lean into those challenges.
Right, because it's in those challenges that we often find the greatest rewards.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. So to wrap things up, I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Jordan Peterson.
It's been a pleasure chatting with you about all this.
Likewise. And remember, folks, it all starts with taking that first step, with asking yourself that question. What's one thing I'm doing wrong that I know I'm doing wrong that I could fix? And then having the courage to go out there and do something about it.
It's not always easy, but it's definitely worth it.
So get out there, fix yourselves, and as always, keep striving for a life of meaning and purpose.